Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay, and welcome to the Legion Beta second pass look at the final Warlock spec, the Destruction Warlock. And very different from the other two. You can draw those parallels between Affliction and Demonology, that they're kind of like, they're both dot-based specs, basically, in a way, just that the dots for the Demonology Warlock are like animated. They have like little models and critters. And then, of course, Affliction is all just dot-based. The Affliction Warlock is very straightforward. They all use soul stones, like I've gone over before. Soul shards, I should say. They all have soul stones. They all use soul shards. And it's very similar to how it plays right now. You put Immolate up. You use your Conflag to give yourself some soul shards. And you rotate through Incinerates when you're like just on a filler spell. And then you spam Chaos Bolts. Of course, numbers are all over the place right now, and people are like, oh, Destruction does no damage, and oh, Chaos Bolt is so weak, and blah, blah, blah. Calm down, okay? Calm down. It'll be okay. Maybe. Or it'll be awful. Who knows? I don't know. What expansion has Warlock been bad in, okay? Exactly. So, let's find out here. Let's go through all the basic spellbook stuff, and then we'll go through all the, of course, the artifact stuff with the Scepter of Sargeras. And then we'll go through all the talents. I have Demonic Supremacy, Grimoire of Supremacy right now going on, just because the Infernal looks cool for the opening shot, but don't worry, I'm going to grab my Imp real quick, because the Imp is going to be the pet of choice normally, if you are using a pet. And let's fly over here to the dummies. We'll take off our staff as we would normally with testing to make sure all the tooltips are going to be correct. And let's throw down some spellbook action. So, default, all Warlocks have Soul Leech. So again, all single target damage done by you and your minions grants you and your pet shadowy shields that absorb 10% of the damage dealt for 15 seconds, up to 15% of your maximum HP. So just as you and your pet do damage, you're going to see a little bit of a Soul Leech shield up there. There's nothing else with this for the Destruction Warlock. It is just going to be this. Oh, there's another Warlock friend around here somewhere. Where's the Warlock friend? I see you, Warlock friend. But, yeah. Just extra survivability over the course of the encounter. Nothing crazy right there. And your only other mastery is your massive mastery RNG-ness of your spells deal a random amount of additional damage. Up to 38% damage to you take is... there's a period right there. And then damage you take is also reduced by a random amount up to 8%. Blah. So this means that all of your spells, all of your individual dot ticks, all of your hits of spells, all of your chaos bolts, when you fire them off, have a random extra amount of damage from, I believe, 1% all the way up to 38%. It's just random additional amounts of damage. It's this chaotic energies, and that's the fantasy of the Destruction Warlock. It's nothing wrong with it. People are kind of like, during the stream, they were just like, well, it's going to be really awkward when I have certain pulls where I get high mastery rolls, and then I have certain pulls where I get low mastery rolls. But over the course of the entire encounter, it'll basically work out to be that you just have about half of this bonus on average is going to be what you actually do gain over the course of time. I don't think it's too detrimental. I was told that they may be like increasing the baseline amount so that it's between like a higher amount than 1% and the upper echelon. But that is, of course, yet to be seen based on just buffs that are going to happen or changes to the actual spells in the beta build. Of course, anything can happen. It is a beta environment after all. But what you're seeing right there is basically the actual full rotation. So you just put up Immolate. Immolate is a very short cast time. It is an 18-second fire damage dot that causes light fire damage initially, and then an additional larger amount over 18 seconds, and a 15% chance to generate one soul shard when you cast it, or on every dot tick. And it has a chance to... the chance to gain a soul shard is doubled on critical strikes. So that starts me out right off the bat with the stat allocation, most likely, for your Destruction Warlock, rather. Mastery is good, but it's, random. But Critical Strike has a lot of extra bonuses that you'll see later on. So what we had written down, which never was really confirmed, and it was kind of just always going to be like, oh, well, this is better. Oh, this could be better. It sounds like crit first, then mastery equals haste, or haste equals mastery, and then versatility being last. The issue with crit being first, and that the contentious point of haste being better than crit, is that the faster your immolate ticks, the faster you can generate shards, but the more crit you have, the higher chance to generate shards. So I have no idea. They'll figure this out in the end of days, but really all the whole stat priority thing just comes down to is, what are you going to be gemming? What are you going to be enchanting? And if you're going to favor crit over haste or whatever else happens, because your gear to some degree is going to be like, well, they're crit haste boots or they're mastery crit boots. What are better? But that's like the decision you're going to make. There's really, the stats are a little bit easier in Legion because they're not as, like, there's not as many variables, like multi-strike being gone, for example. There's one less variable in there. And then every stat is like good because haste is faster casts, right? And more casts. It's faster chaos bolts. Haste is more immolate ticks for more soul shards, but mastery is more damage. And crit is more damage. Crit is also more soul. You see what I mean? Like, everything kind of wraps around to be worth it. Nothing is like, that stat is terrible. Even versatility just scales slower because it takes more versatility stat to stack up with the other stats, right? To get 1% of versatility costs more secondary stats than the others. Even versatility is still flat damage. Your mastery is just flat damage, but it's random flat damage. So, Incinerate, still here. Pretty quick cast time. It's the same cast time baseline as like a Shadow Bolt from the other Warlock specs. But you draw fire towards the enemy, dealing light fire damage. Nothing really crazy going on there. It's just the same spell effect as it's been. At least pathing-wise, it has the new fire particles because of all the new updates. And then you also have Conflagrate. Raga. So it's a cooldown reduced by haste. Also, haste scales with this. But Conflag is rotational. And depending on the encounter, you don't need more soul shards. And even at 11 seconds right now, it's really quick. But it's 12-second recharge normally, I believe. And it deals light fire damage, and it generates 1 soul shard on demand. So you're going to be using this to, top off your soul shard to grab 1 more. You're going to be using it to rotationally to have some burst involved if you need to, of course. And you're going to make sure you probably already have 1 charge cooling down and 1 charge available for situational parts. I don't think you'd ever totally dumpster both of these in a row, depending on the part of the fight you're on. But you never want to be sitting on just 2 charges, because then you're wasting the recharge time of Conflag. And then Chaos Bolt. 2 soul shards, very long cast time, 3 seconds base before any other talents or haste, of course. You can make them pretty quickly, so don't look at this and think that's, oh, it's so slow. But you unleash a devastating blast of chaos, dealing chaos damage. Chaos Bolt always critically strikes, and your critical strike chance increases its damage. So now your main spell, which is slow to cast depending on talents and gear, is amplified in overall flat damage by your critical strike chance, just because it always crits. So you never lose anything here. So not only does Mastery give it more flat damage randomly, Critical Strike gives it more flat damage, Haste makes it cast faster, and Versatility gives it flat damage. There's a lot of, I don't know what's the best stat. Like, I'm not sure. Everyone always asks what the best stat is, and sometimes the specs are not determined enough or not defined enough yet to figure that out. But crit is huge, haste is huge, and I would assume also mastery is pretty darn huge as well. So more on that, of course, when all the guide writers and Google document stuff, and when I do the interviews on the show in the future, we'll all figure that out for you, and I'm sure we'll be told how it all works out. Other than that, for your other uses to spend on soul shards is Rain of Fire. So Rain of Fire by default now is 3 soul shards. It has a 2-second cast time reduced by haste. You call down Rain of Fire, Rain of Hellfire, dealing fire damage over 8 seconds to enemies in the area. It's, of course, hastened by haste. These can stack. You can put multiple Rain of Fires on the same location, and they do all additively stack in the same area. During the VOD, which can be linked down below, all the notes, the bug reports, the ways to support the stream, my social media stuff, all that down is linked below here, with some blue posts that are down there too. We'll more on those blue posts later, but there are a couple blue posts that go over your artifact in great detail. So check those out if you want to like read the blue posts and how those all work out for you. But Rain of Fire, back to this one, this does compound and stack on top of each other. It's kind of just like, it's almost like Starfall with the balance through it, except that it costs 3 soul shards instead of costing astral power. But the Destruction Warlock doesn't really have a lot of burst AoE. Even looking at all of their talents and factoring in everything else, they have a little bit, but their burst AoE is not their strong suit. They have great 2-target cleave, they have great single-target burst, and they have very sustained AoE. Mostly because of the cross-dotting effect of Immolate, and the ability to gain soul shards so very quickly, and to be able to lay out a lot of Rain of Fires. In the VOD, I think I had 4 Rain of Fires going at one point in time because I had really lucky procs. I mean, it's hard to get that fast, that many casts that quickly, but I was casting my 3rd Rain of Fire, or my 4th rather, 3rd in a row, when the first one was disappearing. So the combat log can explode with Rain of Fire stacking. I mean, you can get so many ticks over and over and over and over again in such quick succession because you can stack on top of each other. So overall, Rain of Fire is kind of like boring, but it is very consistent, very stable, and there is a way you can just continuously chain it over and over and over again. But that's all it does. There's no weird generation of soul shards on this anymore. Soul shards are only from Immolate and from Conflag. There are some other perks later on that can actually generate soul shards too, but that is the core of it. Everything else you still have Banish, that works on demons, aberrations, and elementals for 30 seconds on one target. Casting it again will remove it from the target itself. Then you have Demonic Gateway. Demonic Gateway, when you cast it near yourself, it can't cast once you start moving your mouse away. This is the new like reticle binding in the game in Legion, where it will smart bounce to minimum range, and if you move your mouse too far away, it will lock and just, you know, snap to the max distance regardless of where your mouse actually is. So you still have your gateway. You still can create your soul wells. You still can create your health stones. You have Drain Life. All Warlocks have Drain Life. The Affliction Warlock Drain Life is the most powerful because it's part of the rotation. But the Drain Life is very expensive. 33,000 mana per second. You drain life from the target, causing light shadow damage over 6 seconds, reduced by haste, and healing you for 600% of the damage done. So, not very much. Like a 30,000 spammed heal isn't incredibly powerful, considering you'll have like 1.5 million HP when you get level 110. But, you know, as you gain more and more gear, of course, your drain life will increase in potency. But not too bad. Just your little bit of a healing spell here. Enslaved Demon still works up to a level 111. So you cannot ever enslave demons on trash mobs in dungeons because they're usually 112, like in raids. And of course, it won't work on bosses. Eye of Kilrog is still Eye of Kilrogging, of course. This is still here doing the thing and the stuff, being, you know, Eye of Kilroggy. You still have Fear, limit to 1 target. It's a 20-second disorient. Damage may cancel the effect. Costs 10% of your mana. It's very expensive. Health Funnel sacrifices 24% of your max health to heal your summoned demon for double that amount. Life Tap, as I just showed off, is 30% of your maximum mana returned to you for the cost of 10% of your max HP. Life Tap is not much of a thing for Destruction, as it is for the other 2 Warlock specs. You can actually talent away from ever even using Life Tap, which I'll show off later. But Ritual Summoning is still here. You can still drop your TVs, summon people in. You can still Soulstone people. Soulstone can be used either preemptively before combat or, of course, as a battle res itself. And, of course, all your demons are here as well. CC Demon, your Interrupt Demon, Tanky Demon, and then your Imp. I showed off that with Supremacy, you have the Permanent Infernal. He is the tankiest. She, Infernal, is the tankiest pet you can have. The Blueberry is okay, but the Infernal is easily the best tank pet, so probably for leveling. Doomguard and Infernal, by default, are your 3-minute cooldowns. Let me talent away from this real quick. So Doomguard and Infernal are your 3-minute cooldowns. They cost 1 soul shard. They are your single target DPS talent, or sorry, summon rather, and they're your only cooldown. So 25-second duration on Doomguard or 25-second duration on Infernal. And the Infernal is an AoE pet. And the Doomguard is, of course, your single target pet. The Infernal lands with a stun, and then AoEs, and then lightly smacks whatever you want it to smack. Unending Breath, movement speed underwater increased by 20%, and underwater breathing. And Unending Resolve is a 40% damage reduction, and grants you immunity to interrupts and silence effects for 8 seconds. Good to note, though, that the Unending Resolve cooldown is only, my brain, I have to catch up there for a minute, only 90-second cooldown for Destruction Warlock. The other Warlock specs are both 3 minutes baseline. Demonology gets it to 2.5 minutes, but Destruction here is a 90-second base. It's a little bit of a balancing tweak there on Unending Resolve. But that's the basic rotation in the basic spellbook. Put up Immolate, cast Conflag, cast Chaos Bolts. Only other little monkey wrench you can throw in here is a spell called Havoc. Havoc costs a fair bit of mana. It'll mark one target, marks a target, a single target, for 8 seconds, causing your single target spells to also strike the Havoc victim. Limit to 1. This is why your 2-target cleave is very, very powerful for the Destruction Warlock. You can put up Immolates, you can conflag on them, and then, of course, when your Chaos Bolt lands, it'll land on both targets. Of course, when Havoc falls off, it won't do it. Dang it. 8 seconds. You get 2 Chaos Bolts, which is a good thing to illustrate here, is that you don't have a lot of time with Havoc. So when you cast Havoc, you want to then be able to immediately cast 2 Chaos Bolts. Due to the long cast time of Chaos Bolt, you only get 2, and then Havoc is gone. Rotational Cleave, you can upgrade this later on with a talent, which I'll show off, of course. But Havoc gives you the 2-target burst, 2-target cleave that the Destruction Warlock is used to. But it does transfer your Shadow Burns, it transfers your Immolates, it transfers your Conflag for damage, not for extra soul shards, etc., etc. Let's toss on the Septa of Sargeras, which literally has like a little dark portal. I can't move my camera down any farther in the character sheet. But you have a little dark portal in your staff, which is really cool. So the base spell you gain here, this is my artifact macro. You can grab this and add this to your repertoire of macros for Legion. It will show, the show tooltip will show up with the actual icon that your weapon is. Make sure you have the question mark as your actual icon, because that then utilizes with the show tooltip 16, which is slot 16 on your actual character here. And then run socket inventory item, open parentheses, 16, close parentheses, semicolon. That way you'll get a ability to open your artifact really easily without having to go into your spellbook and then shift right-click to open it all the time. But you start right here with Dimensional Rift. This is what the blue posts are in my notes listed below. Dimensional Rift has 3 different portals: Unstable Tear, Shadowy Tear, and Chaos Tear, or Chaotic Tear. There are 3 different ones. They all have an equal chance to be spawned. Dimensional Rift is a 45-second recharge, 40-yard range, 3 charges maximum, where you rip a hole in time and space, opening a portal that damages your target. Your target. Whatever you target the portal on when you open it, it will target that thing. But again, there are 3 separate portals that can spawn. Right here, we've got 2 unstable portals, which are these green ones that are around there. The one that popped up and then disappeared was the Chaotic Portal. Chaos Tear, rather. Sorry, Chaos Tear. The Chaos Tear fires a big Chaos Bolt blob. It does benefit from your critical strike rating for extra damage. It does not, however, scale with your mastery. None of these portals scale with your mastery at all, but the other 2, the Unstable Tear and the Shadowy Tear, will scale with your haste. Again, a lot more information on how these portals work can be found in my Google document listed below. There are 4 different blue posts that talk all about them. Let's do one more. There's the shadowy one, yeah. So the unstable one shoots out those unstable chaos barrages. The Shadow Bolt one throws off Shadow Bolts. They are not balanced to be even. Looking at my logs over here, let me see real quick. I did just some rough math when I was testing. The difference in their damage is pretty substantial, honestly, but I have it confirmed that they are not meant to be in parity. They are supposed to be a little bit random, just because the Destruction Warlock is kind of random. Let's see. Yeah, so I did a Shadowy Tear roughly did about 332,000 damage. Of course, the more haste you have, the more that will impact that. Unstable Tear did about 275,000 damage. And the Chaos Tear, which is the one big giant Chaos Bolt, of course, I don't have much crit on my actual character, right? The more crit you have, the stronger that'll hit. But the Chaos Tear, you can see there, only did 231,000 damage. So right now, based on my gear, the Shadow Tear is the strongest. The Chaos Tear is the weakest, with the Unstable one being in the middle. But I'm sure that will work out to be a little better over the course of gearing, since the other two of them will scale with your haste, and one of them scales with your crit. They count as pets. They count as short-term pets. So, like, abilities like Mana Tap will not buff them. However, Soul Harvest, which increases your pet's damage, would buff them for all intents and purposes. So again, we'll throw off 2 more portals here just to see them in action. They do spawn randomly around you. Depending on where you are standing, they do spawn randomly around you when you do summon the portals. But that is the main rotational extra ability. We found out that working around Dimensional Rift on the pole, you'll probably cast all 3 of them. But then outside of that, you're probably going to wait until you have almost 3, and then you'll use 1. And you'll always hold 2 charges of Dimensional Rift for, you know, when you need burst, or lining up with certain cooldowns, or parts of encounters where you need to help put some more damage out on a priority target, something like that. But you would never just cast them whenever they cool down. That's probably going to be a bad thing to do. Yeah, Chaos Blob. But Dimensional Rift. You start here with Flames of the Pit, which is 4% more fire damage. Devourer of Life is that Drain Life has a 45% chance to increase its damage and healing by 25% for 15 seconds. You can just spam Drain Life a couple times and then it'll proc. And then you get increased damage and increased healing on your Drain Life. It will last for as long as you refresh the Drain Life. It's fine. It's 45%. So it's not a really like hard perk to like work around, but it gives you more sustain if you need to because your Drain Life is kind of weak, but it will heal you for more, of course. Residual Flames increases the damage dealt by Immolate by 18%. Immolate's going to be a ton of your damage. This is really good. Planeswalkers that teleporting through your demonic gateway increases your movement speed by 30% for 6 seconds. Like a little like micro sprint. You know, it's like, okay. It's going to be one of the last perks you're going to get easily is Planeswalker, but that Magic the Gathering reference, too strong. Eternal Struggle is that after casting Life Tap, you will take 30% less damage for 6 seconds. I'm kind of not a fan that Eternal Struggle and the Drain Life buff are both the same face. They're both the same Drain face. But I have to confirm that it's not a bug and it's intentional, so whatever. It's kind of weird to me, but oh well. But you take 30% less damage for 6 seconds. So on large hits, like if you're going to be about to be chunked by like 1,000,000 plus damage by some raid boss mechanic or whatever, you should probably life tap it because the damage you will take yourself, like the 10% of your actual HP, is never going to be more than like taking 30% less from the incoming hit. So it is a little bit of extra added, almost passive damage reduction because you'll be life tapping here and there anyway. So you trade your HP for 6 seconds of reduced damage. Burning Hunger increases the critical strike chance of Immolate by 24%. So I have a 35% chance with Immolate right now. So imagine if you actually had some crit on your gear. Like if I didn't have all this versatility, because this is the PvP gear, right? Then you would actually have a fair portion of crit. And remember, Immolates has a 15% chance to generate soul shards whenever it's cast or whenever it ticks. But then, of course, it's doubled on critical strikes. So if you have 50% chance to crit with this plus your base chance with Immolate, then you're going to gain a lot more soul shards, even on single target fights. It's a really good perk right here, too. These are both really strong. Down this way, all the way down to Dimensional Ripper down here, is going to be Fire from the Sky, which increases the damage dealt by Rain of Fire by 15%. This is a song reference. Master of Disaster, also a song reference, increases the damage dealt by Incinerate by 12%. Demonic Durability is reduced to the cooldown of Unending Resolve by 30%. So now you have a 1-minute cooldown on UR. effectively a 52-second cooldown due to the fact that it lasts 8 seconds. This is a huge amount of on-demand damage reduction. But granted, you don't have any other source of it. You don't have any Soul Link or any like really big self-healing like the Demonology or Affliction Warlocks have, so probably huge. But again, it also makes you immune to interrupt and silence effects, so you can get off those sweet, sweet Chaos Bolts when you normally would not be able to if you were getting interrupted. Fire and the Flames. You see what they're doing here? Reduces the cast time of Incinerate by 10%. So this makes your Incinerate cast time with my crappy gear that I have on this character right now a 1.65, which is almost a global cooldown. So it's not bad. It's pretty quick. Soul Snatcher is the Chaos Bolt has a 15% chance to refund 1 Soul Shard. This one's kind of weird. So I have Soul Conduit on right now. Every Warlock can have Soul Conduit. It's the only shared 100 talent, where every Soul Shard you spend has a 20% chance to be refunded. I'm not exactly sure how this works, because does this mean that a Chaos Bolt could give you 3 shards? Or has a better chance to give you at least 1? Or just 2? Are they different? I'm sure it's on the forum post somewhere, like in the theory crafting thread. But basically it means that Chaos Bolt has a small built-in Soul Conduit. So Soul Conduit itself and Soul Snatcher are pretty powerful tools together, depending on how your RNG favors you, with you having more Chaos Bolts. I'm not sure. And then Chaotic Instability increases the critical strike damage dealt by Chaos Bolt by 8%. It's, in the long and short, is it's a flat 8% damage increase on Chaos Bolt because it always crits. So that means that Chaos Bolts will always now do 208% critical strike damage, up from 200%. So it's a pretty serious increase in overall damage with these 2 talents, because you can get more Chaos Bolts overall with the Soul Snatcher, and even more damage on them with Chaotic Instability. But again, increasing the critical strike chance also, depending on how your mastery rolls, can give you higher or lower crits as well, just because if it's a small mastery bonus, the 8% is kind of like, meh. But if it's a high mastery bonus, you can get an even larger Chaos Bolt. Now, for the path at which you will most likely take to level your... No. to level your Destruction Warlock, for your artifacts anyway, this is the best talent I think I've seen. Out of all artifact perks, like flavor-wise, is so good. Lord of Flames. I think it should be called... Reign of Chaos, but it's not. So Lord of Flames means that once every 10 minutes, summon Infernal, or if you have Supremacy, its Meteor Strike ability. I'll show those off in a moment. Summon Infernal will summon 3 additional Infernals to serve you for 25 seconds. So this, for the most part, Supremacy is not going to be a great raiding talent for the Destruction Warlock. It might be, but if you were to take Supremacy and have your Doomguard out, to utilize Lord of the Flames, which is going to be your first perk you'll go to, mostly because of this, Lord of Flames would mean you have to then unsummon your Doomguard in combat, and you'll be summoning your Infernal, and they have to make your Infernal cast the Meteor Strike ability. However, normally, because it's a 3-minute cooldown baseline, you want to utilize your 3-minute cooldown to summon your Infernal normally, and then it will summon all 3 of your additional little baby Fernals as well. So they do land with some extra damage. They all pulse with their own Immolate aura, and they all do the exact same amount of damage. But this is a gigantic AoE talent, or perk rather, and even a huge single target one as well. They last for 25 seconds. So the last same time that your normal Infernal would last, like a 3-minute cooldown, for example. But if you utilize this cooldown properly, you get a 10-minute cooldown right here in the corner, so you can't ever recast it. This does reset when you die. But if you utilize this properly, like on the pole, or when the boss needs crazy bit of burst, it's going to be a huge bonus to your toolkit. Because I can only imagine that that makes the Lord of Flames and the Infernal summon on a 3-minute cooldown, even though it's like a hidden 10-minute cooldown, sure, one of the strongest, like, actual just throw down, do damage cooldowns. Easily, see? We can reset there. So you can utilize it. So if you wipe, like on a boss fight, right, like on a raid boss, and you wipe or right with a dungeon boss, and you used it, it will reset, of course. Your cooldown might not reset depending on how they're going to work on that nonsense. But for the most part, you should be fine to utilize Lord of Flames on every encounter in a raid or like the important dungeon bosses and do a whole lot of damage. But your first Golden Dragon right here, then you're going to be going down and getting Dimensional Ripper. The path to take will probably go to Master of Disaster into Demonic Durability and then both of the Chaos Bolt talents, even though Fire and Flames is also really good. You'll get Fire from the Sky later, because meh. But this is Dimensional Ripper, which Incinerate has a 5% chance to grant you a charge of Dimensional Rift. Now, a 5% chance would mean that every 20 casts... Wow, I got 3 Chaotic Tears? Okay. Every... Oh, really? Right there? Okay. Every roughly 20 casts on a 5% chance, you will gain 1 charge of your dimensional portals, your dimensional rift. So the weird thing about that is, though, is that you're going to always want to like float around 2 and have 1 recharging, so that when 1 suddenly recharges, you can activate it, right? That's why you never want to sit on 3 charges once you have this perk, because if you're sitting on 3 charges, it could reset it and you wasted a dimensional rift. But sitting on 2 charges, having 1 always cooling down, if you get a recharge, then you still have space for it, right? But over the course of an entire raid encounter, you may get a couple more of these. The time it actually is that you're casting a bunch of Incinerates is going to be a little varied based on the encounter. So, but overall, like right now, I'm like barely even casting any, right? But it does give you a direct benefit to hopefully, based on RNG, get some extra dimensional rifts throughout the encounter. Even if you get 1 or 2 extra, that's a whole lot more damage for free. I mean, Dimensional Rift costs you nothing. Just a recharge time. And then lastly, you'll take Conflagration of Chaos. Conflagrate, Conflagrate, has a chance to guarantee your next Confliggity to critically strike, and to increase its damage by your critical strike chance. Basically turns Conflag into a mini Chaos Bolt, sort of. So this has a 50% chance to proc, I was told. It'll basically be up almost all the time. So again, here's Conflagration of Chaos. And then your next Conflag always crits and will do more damage based on your critical strike chance. It gains that damage bonus, same thing that Chaos Bolt does. There is again, it's very, very frequent. But because it is only on Conflag damage, it's kind of like, I'll get that last. So you'll work on getting like Fire from the Sky last. You'll get Planeswalker last. You know, you may even get Fire and Flames last because of how many artifact power it'll eventually start costing. But it's not a bad perk. It's just probably the weakest one of the 3, just because it's only amplifying your Conflag damage by a little bit. But that is the Scepter of Sargeras. This is your Paragon Circle, by the way. This is your first point of 20 is 5% increased damage done. The next 19 will equal up to a total of 10 more % damage done for 15% overall DPS, or damage increase rather. And it costs exceedingly more and more artifact power as you put more points into it. This is the end game progression for your character. The first point is the more beneficial one, and then you can probably start working on your other artifacts after that, because the next 19 points are only 10% damage. But, you know, that's something to work towards if you never play the other specs and just keep dumping artifact power into this. Even though Stolen Power is called this, but the Demonology Warlock also has Stolen Power, so it's kind of weird. The spell IDs on the WoW-DB or whatever backends, you might get confused because there are different versions of Stolen Power. But yeah. But that is the Scepter overall. Let's grab some talents now, shall we? We're going to go in order. Normally, I'm going to talk about your CC talents and your utility tier talents first, and then we'll go over everything else. Get these out of the way. So these are actually the exact same for Demonology. You have Shadow Fury. It's a short cast time, 8 yard AoE, 4-second stun, and a 30-second cooldown. That's it. It's no longer instant, which is, you know, it's okay. But everyone's mobility and everyone's, like, CC has all been cut back in Legion. Everyone doesn't have, like, all these crazy things anymore. So Shadow Fury being a little bit weaker in the way that has a cast time and a bit of a longer cooldown, I think, because of the talent as well, you have to actually take this to gain it at all, is, you know, it's situational. Mortal Coil does work with, Mortal Coil does work with Havoc. It is a single target Horrify it's a 3-second incapacitate, and it's 11% maximum health. When you use it with Havoc, you only get 1 heal. Havoc just duplicates the spell's effect, but does not give you 2 of the actual heals. But single target CC and peel, it's the old Death Coil effect from like way back yonder. So, and then Demon Skin is your Soul Leech absorption now passively will recharge at a rate of 1% of your max HP every 1 second, and now may absorb up to 20% maximum health from 15%, so you get super Soul Leech. I can talent that in 1 second. But Demon Skin overall is really strong. I don't think anything else in this tier is like better than it, at least for like raiding or PvP. I don't know, because it's so much survivability. It depends on, I guess, if you're getting aggressed on in PvP combat more often than not. You might need the peel or the AoE stun to, like, you know, help flag capture. But for raiding, having the shield continuously recharging and the fact that your damage contribution to it is larger, Demon Skin is so good. Which is kind of why, like, you'll probably never see the other two in raids unless you need the extra CC. But other classes can provide AoE stuns too, so. Dark Pact, I'll go to last. I'll look at Demonic Circle first. This is unfortunately a one button, because of talent now. You'll have to make a macro to be able to cancel Demonic Circle to replace it. But it's got a 30-second recharge rate where you can teleport to your Demonic Circle, of course. I think when I move it, you have to, like, actually cancel it, and then you can move it again. So to make the macro for it is kind of obnoxious, I suppose, but it's not a big deal. But this tier is all about movement or survivability. Your other talent over here is Burning Rush, which increases your movement speed by 50%. Also damages yourself for 5% of your maximum health every 1 second. Your Demon Skin or Soul Leech Shield is ignored in this case. Burning Rush hurts you past those, so you cannot game Demon Skin with Burning Rush to gain the speed without hurting yourself regardless. I say I have a shield right now, but it's not doing anything. So this hurts you past that. Let's say 50% sprint. Also, movement impairing effects may not reduce you below 100% of your normal movement speed. Lasts until canceled. So a sprint, a blink, basically a Warlock blink, and then Dark Pact. Not as strong for the Destruction Warlock as the Demonology Warlock because you can't buff your pet, because it sacrifices 20% of your demon's HP to give you a shield for 400% of the sacrificed health for 20 seconds. And if you have no demon, your health is sacrificed instead, usable while suffering from control impairing effects. So a lot of the time, you're probably going to be running with Grimoire of Sacrifice for the Destruction Warlock. So just to show this an example, when you sacrifice your pet to gain that bonus, your Dark Pact now is much stronger. So we're at almost 1 million shielding, where you have more HP than your pet does. So your pet would give you a much smaller shield. Unless you're using a Blueberry or an Infernal, then it'll give you a pretty good shield. But I think for the most part, you'll probably be sacrificing your own HP depending on the encounter. But Dark Pact is super powerful due to the fact that it is a gigantic amount of absorb. And coupled with the fact that you have a 1 minute cooldown on Unending Resolve now too, you can put up Unending Resolve and then put up Dark Pact. They're both 1 minute cooldowns. And the way that absorbs work in this game is that damage reduction effects increase the damage reduced going into the shield too. So that means your Dark Pact shield at 1 million HP would effectively be 1.4 million HP for that current 8-second window for Unending Resolve anyway, because it requires 40% more damage to break that Dark Pact. This happened back on like Tortos, back in Torno Thunder, where the shields that you would gain from the stupid crystals, that would give you a percentage base of your max health shield. But if you used a damage reduction cooldown on yourself, the shield would never pop, because you would never take your full HP bar and damage to remove the shield. So absorbs with DRs behind them are very, very scary. But again, you don't have like any self-healing. Drain life is kind of pitiful, and you don't have like a pet to peel for yourself, right? In that same regard. So having big DRs is probably going to be part of how Destruction actually plays. But those are your 2 utility tiers, personal and a little bit of raid or group utility here, of course. But let's go back up here to Backdraft. Casting Conflagrate reduces the cast time of Incinerate and Chaos Bolt by 30% for for 5 seconds. So here is what Incinerate looks like normally. Right now it is a 1.65. So if I cast a Conflag, 1.15. Much, much, much faster. You get off like 3 of them because of the global cooldown, but the more haste you have on your actual character, the lower your global cooldown is going to be, so there's that to take into account. And then, of course, your Chaos Bolt, normally right now, is 2.75, so if I Conflag it, 1.92. Much faster. And you can get off 2 of those, just like you can during Havoc as well. So, not too bad. Backdraft is PvP-ish because it helps you get cast times off when you're getting, you know, punched in the face or stabbed in the butt. But overall, it also has some synergy later on with like Fire and Brimstone and Eradication, which I'll show this off later. I'll jump over here to Shadowburn real quick because I want to talk about this a little bit more than the other talents. So, Shadowburn. There was some how to do huffty-puffty on the stream that Shadowburn is better than Chaos Bolt. And you'll just spam Shadowburn and never ever hit Chaos Bolt ever again. Shadow Bolt does 70,000 damage. Plus your mastery, of course. So 93, 75, 77, 97, 90, 86, 83, right? It does okay damage. The thing here is that it generates 2 soul shards if the target dies within 5 seconds of hitting with a Shadow Burn. But now look at like a couple Chaos Bolts. Chaos Bolt always crits, gains more damage potential from always critting, and of course scales higher with your mastery and your critical strike chance. So over the course of just flat time, Shadowburn looks like it does more damage directly because like it's so much more consistent, but Chaos Bolt will still do more damage. And if they ever find out that the balancing is so weird where you're never using Chaos Bolt, all you're doing is spamming Shadowburn on single target fights and ignoring the bonus of Shadowburn, they're gonna nerf Shadowburn. You know they will. And Shadowburn doesn't always crit, so you're just gaining less benefit from that whole thing. The way the Shadowburn is really good is in this example here, where you know ads are dying very soon, so you Havoc something and you Shadowburn something else. Both things get Shadowburn for 1 shard, and if both of those targets die, you'll gain 4 shards. So for AoE, Shadowburn, if you use it properly, can give you more shards for either more Havoc Chaos Bolt for cleave, or, more likely, you're able to then Havoc up a bunch of ads, for example, because you can Shadowburn Havoc 2 mobs, and then, like, Shadowburn something else on a different timer, like a wait for it, and if you can gain a lot of soul shards, you can just spam Rain of Fire. And because Rain of Fire stacks, Rain of Fire. It does very little damage, like, overall, like, on the tooltip. Rain of Fire isn't, like, impressive. 100,000 damage, it's like, you know, it's okay. But if you had 4 of these, or 3 or 4 of these in one area, that's not bad. That's why their AoE damage is very constant. It's not very bursty, but Rain of Fire with Shadowburn nonsense is very, very, very constant. Roaring Blaze. This is basically like Shadow Flame on the Demonology Warlock. So what this does is that Conflagrate increases your remaining Immolate damage on the target by 60% until Immolate expires or is refreshed. This stacks. So Shadow Flame on the Demonology Warlock has that like Hand of Gul'dan-ish style of play where you cast 1, when it's almost falling off, you cast 2 stacks, and then immediately once you get that 3rd recharge back on Shadow Flame, you cast it again, because Shadow Flame stacks 3 times. Roaring Blaze is very similar, where you can cast your Immolate, and cast 1, and then 2 Conflags into it, which increases damage by 60% twice. So Immolate now deals a lot of damage. And then you can actually put 1 more into it as well. It does stack up to 3 times. I don't say it doesn't stack 4 times because you literally just can't cast another Conflag into the Immolate. It falls off. However, the Roaring Blaze triple Conflag for single target is very much for bursty. Normally, what you want to do, and this makes the rotation a little bit differently, because what you want to make sure you're doing is you're going to recast Immolate. You're going to cast Immolate once, then twice, and then you're going to put 2 Conflags into it. And now the rotation, ignore the fact that I had shards anyway, the rotation takes care of itself. You will let Immolate take its full duration, and by the time Immolate comes back and falls off the target completely, you will then have 2 charges of Conflag back up, which could be, you know, faster based on your haste, of course, but you can recast your Immolate once and twice, and then conflag once and conflag twice again, and then go about your business. This is for consistent damage, not for burst. If you want to do more burst, you could put a third stack of conflag into your Immolate. But remember, the reason why you cast it twice is because you will want to pandemic the actual dot, so it lasts longer. The effect of pandemicing a spell is based on that you can refresh a spell before it's run its full course, but a spell cannot be refreshed and extended past 30% of its maximum duration. But Roaring Blaze, because you can put 120% more damage into Immolate, effectively, you want that Immolate to last as long as it can. So you want it to go up to 24 seconds, and then you want to double tap that conflag. You lose 1 tick with not having both, but then now it's going to tick for this full duration at 22-ish seconds at double the conflag damage additions from Roaring Blaze. It's a ton of damage. It's very, very single target oriented. You can't really do this for AoE. You can use it with Havoc, though. You can Immolate, double conflag on Havoc's targets, and because you have enough time, you will now 2-targeting with full stacked Immolates with Roaring Blaze on both. Again, more going back to what I said earlier, that the Destruction Warlock has lots of 2-target, consistent, 2-target cleave, I guess you could say, damage. It's very just consistent, straightforward, constant 2-target damage. Roaring Blaze definitely helps that a lot. All right, Reverse Entropy. This is the talent that goes into the mana problem of the Destruction Warlock. So, Immolate's your most expensive spell. Let's dunk some mana real quick. Normally, of course, as you spend more and more mana, you're going to want to life tap. Reverse Entropy reduces the cast time of Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire by 0.5 seconds each, and they restore 35% of your maximum mana when you cast them. So, my mana is down to 50% right now. Let's cast a Chaos Bolt. Let's cast some more Immolate because I'm a bad Warlock. Rain of Fire? Oh. Now, you wouldn't want to just take Life Tap off your bars exactly, because you want to make sure you can still use Life Tap for, for your Eternal Struggle. If you need to, anyway. But the bonus of Reverse Entropy is that you never have to Life Tap normally, because you're going to rotate through Chaos Bolts, you're going to be at maximum mana. It also makes your Chaos Bolt a lot faster. You can combine this with Backdraft, for example, so you get even faster Chaos Bolts. Really fast Chaos Bolts. You get 3 of them. Almost 3 of them, I think. With more haste, you can definitely Backdraft with 3 Chaos Bolts, but right now, so 2.29 plus Backdraft is 1.6 seconds. As long as you have the Backdraft at 0 seconds and you start casting your Chaos Bolt, it'll reduce the cast time and stay there for the whole cast. So you don't have to hit it immediately if you're moving, for example, but once you get that, you wham, bam. So Backdraft and Reverse Entropy could be really good for just spamming Chaos Bolts, right? I'm not sure how the damage loss difference if you don't using the Roaring Blaze shenanigans, but now if you're looking at this 2-target cleave effect, when you put up Havoc and then you put up a Backdraft, you can get those 2 Chaos Bolts off even faster to make sure they actually hit both targets. So the benefit there is, of course, the extra 2-target cleave, the quality of life improvement on how much faster you can cast Rain of Fire, or how much faster you can cast your Chaos Bolt, and of course that you never have to ever hit Life Tap for mana ever again. I'll just talk about Mana Tap. I'm not going to show it off because I don't know how it's supposed to work exactly with Destruction. Destruction and Affliction have Mana Tap. Demonology does not have this. But you consume 30% of your maximum mana, or sorry, current mana. I was thinking about maximum mana on this. So current mana for 10% increased damage for 20 seconds. It really makes you have to play the Mana Tap, Life Tap circle. But it's only a 10% increase in damage. It could stack with things like Soul Harvest and your summon pets, all that kind of stuff for more burst, maybe. But how much better is it to cast Chaos Bolts faster, normally, than is it to have a rotational 10% damage amp? Apparently, Mana Tap is simming the highest, but just because the spreadsheets and a robot say it's the best, are you a robot? Are you going to manage your mana tap 100% fine all the time based on any variables happening in an encounter? I don't like it. If you like it, more power to you. But Cataclysm is right here as well. Cataclysm is your burst AoE. This has a 45-second cooldown, long cast time, where you conjure a Cataclysm at the target location, dealing a ton of Shadow Flame damage to all enemies within 8 yards and inflicting them with Immolate. So, used properly, Cataclysm will be insane. Imagine a fight like Scorpion, the one that has the most adds in any encounter in this next tier of rating in Legion. If you Cataclysm 10 Scorpions, you've got 10 Immolates ticking. How many Soul Shards do you think you might get off of that? How many Rain of Fires or how many Chaos Bolts you going to cast? This face is what I come to mind when I, like, that's a lot of Immolates, though. So, Cataclysm is your burst AoE. Reverse Entropy is single target damage and going to be, of course, just sustained AoE via Rain of Fire. But again, when you take Cataclysm, you're back to, you know, managing your mana with life tap, so keep that in mind. But it looks awesome. Does a ton of damage in comparison to any other AoE ability you have for at least burst. I mean, almost 200,000. And the big thing is just laying out free Immolates on one cast. Ugh. On certain fights where you can put up like 4 or 5 or more Immolates with one cast, that's huge for Soul Shards. Just stupid big. So Soul Harvest real quick before I move on to the other ones, because it's just like every Warlock has this as well. So Soul Harvest increases your damage and your pet's damage by 20% for 10 seconds, increased by 2 seconds for each target afflicted by your Immolate, up to a maximum of 30 seconds. So now Burst comes into mind with Cataclysm, but if you Cataclysm, you know, all those Scorpions, you could then Soul Harvest and have a 30-second duration Soul Harvest, most likely, because you just need 10 targets with Immolate on them to give you the full 20-second bonus. So that's a huge part of how Soul Harvest can work with Cataclysm, for gaining from using AoE to your advantage to gain more, you know, single target damage. And Soul Harvest can be combined with, you know, other grimoires, for example, like Service, and have an extra little burst cooldown window, because by default, again, you only have your Doomguard or your Infernal. So Soul Harvest could be really beneficial in that sense. I'll show that off the skill effect in a moment, but Fire and Brimstone is a passive talent that your Incinerate now hits all enemies near your target. There's nothing else about this. You know, Backdraft does work with it, so you can Backdraft and then you can cast Incinerate even faster. And you can Cleave. Really, really good. I have Grimoire of Service active right now. Let's show that again, because the passive sustained AoE cleave damage with this kind of talent layout is going to be super huge. So you have your Grimoire of Sacrifice now, where you sacrifice your current demon to gain demonic power, causing all your spells to sometimes deal additional shadow damage to the target, and others within 8 yards, last for 1 hour, or until you summon a demon. This is buffed by Impish Incineration, which would normally give your Imp more damage, but we went over that. But this now gives your demonic power increased damage. I feel like I didn't go over Impish Incineration. It just gives him 18% more Firebolt damage. Whoops. Brain fart. But yeah, with Sacrifice, it buffs Sacrifice's damage by 50%. So now you're looking at your Fire and Brimstone and your Backdraft, and now you can just spam Incinerates like this, and it could just AoE on top of everything else. Like, it can really, really reap some havoc. Heh. So, and of course, if you do put Havoc on something, and then you cast your spells as well, you are going to get technically another Incinerate. Well, not on that same target, because you need the target, but you can do like Havoc this guy over here, for example, if the targets are far away, or there's more spread out, so your Incinerate won't hit, because nearby, so all hit enemies near the target is an 8-yard like circle around your target. So if you're hitting a target over here, and you're attacking over here, right, like you'll be able to still gain that benefit of utilizing Havoc with the Incinerate, Fire, and Brimstone spam as well. If you need to, anyway. That's, of course, up to you. That's Spider Mount, though. So next up, Eradication. I'm going to jump back with Eradication. We're going to take Reverse Entropy. We're going to take Roaring Blaze. Eradication, Chaos Bolt will increase the damage you deal to the target by 12% for 6 seconds. Refreshing whenever, of course, you eradicate the target. So now if you have Immolate, and Roaring Blaze, and Roaring Blaze, and then you cast your Chaos Bolts faster with reverse entropy, you're adding 12% more damage to this target. And as long as you keep this buff up all the time, you know, depending on procs and whatnot, then you're also giving 12% more damage to your super immolate as well. Very single target focused. Just recast the immolate right now to gain some shards. So these all stack together really nicely for pure single target damage. Of course, you can add in sacrifice again, so your spells randomly extra do, you know, more shadow damage, of course. Up to you on this tier. So the next tier, of course, we've gone over sacrifice a couple of times in this video, so I think you understand what that does. Service gives you another cooldown, so you can have your imp out. You can go into your spellbook here and go to Grimoire of Service, grab another imp, for example. Your imp and your Grimoire of Service imp both have Fire Bolt. It's the exact same spell. The Grimoire of Service imp is 25-second duration on a 90-second cooldown that does double damage. And what Fire Bolt does is it does deal 50% additional damage if the target has immolate on them. So let's take Soul Harvest, just to show off like the stacking component for like a burst single target thing. You can keep Roaring Blaze or Entropy, whatever you want to do. Cataclysm only going to work on certain encounters, of course, to, you know, spread those immolates out there. But now if you have your immolate, and your immolate, and your conflag, and your conflag, and then you Soul Harvest, and then you summon your little pet demon real quick here, you have a super imp and your imp, and you're all doing extra damage to the target because of they're doing extra damage because of the immolate stack as well. So this could be a way that you can increase your overall damage. The effect of Soul Harvest that you saw there was that little purple cloud around me. But burst, right? You can do a triple stack Roaring Blaze. You can cast your Chaos Bolts faster during the Soul Harvest window. And you have your Grimoire of Service imp going on, doing extra damage because of your immolate and because of the fact that it does more damage anyway. And then Supremacy is just you have a permanent pet. So I can't show it right now. I'll wait for my cooldown to come back up and I'll show it off. But Supremacy is permanent Doomguard or permanent Infernal. Infernal is your best tanking pet overall, so it'll probably be tanking with that when you are leveling up. But your Doomguard is also just consistent single target damage as well. It also has the cripple effect, and it does have an interrupt as well. But these 3-minute cooldown versions are stronger burst-wise than the permanent versions. So really, I'm not sure where this comes out. I mean, all the grimoires for all the Warlock specs are all incredibly important, because they all utilize different bonuses in their rotation. And hopefully move your grimoires around between service, sacrifice, and supremacy, and you're not just like always sacrifice all the time for everything. You know, I hope there is some wiggle room in making these all viable in certain situations, because if you only have one the whole time, that'd be pretty boring. So Supremacy, like I said earlier, when you summon your Doomguard, he'll be out all the time, doing Doomguard-y things. But now if you want to make use of your artifact trait, your Lord of Flames, for example, you have to then unsummon your Doomguard, summon your Infernal, have it go in, and then your command demon for your Infernal is going to be your Meteor Strike, so whoopah, and then it will summon in your extra elementals. Well, Infernal, sorry. I'm a Shaman player. These are like big fire elemental buddies for me, but they're big demonic infernal buddies for you. So your baby infernals can get in there, bathe them in your rain of fire. They like that. Keeps them all warm and toasty. Don't know if they need that actually, but that's the one thing that's weird about Supremacy in that regard. Did I AoE you somehow? What the heck? Excuse me? Pardon me? I need to change my talents, mister. Get out of here. Let me walk over here and pop this down. Oh my, I think my Infernal AoE when it fell from the sky must have AoE'd him. That does happen. The AoE on those Infernals landing is... You big dummy. If you know who MF Pallytime is, I've done some base adventures with him before. He's a really great guy. I hope we do more in the future. I feel like if you took Pallytime's way of talking and his cadence and his voice and just like pitch shifted it down a couple octaves, that's how the Infernal's voice would be if it actually talked. It is. Think about it. Okay, don't walk by the stupid guy and get us in combat again, you doofus. So again, you've seen Soul Conduit this whole time. Every soul shard you spend has a 20% chance to be refunded. So a spec like Eradication and Reverse Entropy and Roaring Blaze, for example, and maybe even Sacrifice or Supremacy with Soul Conduit, very constant Very RNG oriented. You can get more soul shards when you Chaos Bolt. You can get more soul shards when you AoE. So like Cataclysm with it to add more AoE, and then you can use your Rain of Fire nonsense. Could be really good. Or you can take Fire and Brimstone for more single target, you know, or spread, cleave kind of thing. But then again, because of Soul Snatcher and Soul Conduit, more soul shards overall, but again, it's just RNG oriented. Channel Doomfire. This is a weird one. You may think by reading this that it might be an AoE talent. I highly doubt it. So it's a cooldown reduced by haste. I believe it's 15 seconds. And then it costs little to mana. You launch 15 bolts of fell fire over 3 seconds, reduced by haste, at randomly targeted, random targets afflicted by your immolate within 40 yards. Each bolt will deal fire damage. I'm going to unsummon this guy real quick just so you can see this amazing spell effect that is so just incredibly mind-blowing. Honestly, I think Channel Doomfire is a single target burst talent. Because Soul Conduit is RNG for AoE and cleave and single target, all this stuff like that. Channel Doomfire is also kind of annoying due to the fact that it has a very, very, very short cooldown. You're always kind of like waiting for it. You already have enough to pay attention to with your portals. You have to play with your portals, right? To play with your portals, yeah. Make that a shirt for Destruction Warlocks. I like playing with my portals. But Channel Doomfire is like the spec I have right now, right? Roaring Blaze, Reverse Entropy, Eradication. You can take Supremacy or Sacrifice here, whatever. And then Channel Doomfire is like you put up your Roaring Blaze, you know, you double tap this. You put up your 2 conflags, right? You put up like 1 Chaos Bolt, and then you can Doomfire. And then you can Chaos Bolt again to keep that buff up there, right? Your Eradication buff. You weave in a little Incinerate action right here real quick. Right, because you're waiting for your soul shards to build back up. Let's restack our Immolate again. 1 and 2. But see, like, where do I hit Doomfire? Like, in all that time, like, unless you have, like, good RNG on your soul shard generation, like, it feels so weird to try to weave this into the rotation just because it happens so often. Maybe it's good damage to actually, it's bugged right now where it doesn't understand the pandemic of your Immolate there. But I almost think its cooldown is too short, and it should have a longer cooldown to do a little bit more damage, because it feels so awkwardly forced. I mean, it's a short cooldown, single target with no AoE cleave, like Liquid Magma. It just turns you, the Warlock, into this little Liquid Magma totem, and I don't know. It's the AoE component is pitiful. Like, even with Cataclysm, Channel Doomfire, like, how much is that really going to add? Not much. So it could be for a single target burst, coupled with Eradication to make it do more damage. Wreak Havoc. Wreak Havoc is that this Havoc lasts 20 seconds and has no cooldown, so you can then just move around your Havoc all over the place for constant 2-target cleave. Again, taking advantage of Shadow Burn, you could gain even more soul shards this way because you have more time with your Havoc being on something to weave in Shadow Burns when things are dying. It's very GCD intensive because you got to move your Havoc around a lot, but that's up to you. Only on 1 extra target, of course. But if that's going to be your main focus of an encounter, if you're 2-target cleaving, that's where the Destruction Warlock has a lot of extra benefit, just because of how long this buff lasts for. And again, you can Immolate, conflag, and stack that Roaring Blaze on 2 targets, and then you get more time to throw those 2-target Chaos Bolts out there because of how long your Havoc lasts now. Refresh this bad boy, go in for some Incinerates. You know what I mean? Like, it's much easier to 2-target cleave now because it lasts so much longer. Let's refresh our Immolate here real quick. We'll boom. Let's refresh our Havoc so I don't forget about it. We'll do these again. Your portals do not work with Havoc because they are pets. Only things that are working with Havoc is you. The Warlock interacts with Havoc, not your pets. And the portals count as short-lived pets. So that's how Wreak Havoc works. There is an honor talent called Bane of Havoc, which curses the ground with Demonic Bane, causing all of your single target spells to also strike targets marked with that Bane for 10 seconds. So you can AoE Havoc So you can throw off, if you hit like 10 targets in PvP with that Bane of Havoc, and then you like backdraft, reverse entropy a Chaos Bolt, and like 10 Chaos Bolts fly out of you. Yeah, that can happen. But for PvE, you got Wreak Havoc. But I think overall Destruction is kind of weaker at AoE, except for constant AoE. But their tunnel damage, their single target damage is going to be pretty immense overall. But that is straightforward. That's the Portal Warlock. That is the Destruction Warlock. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, video description box down below has my notes, the bug reports that I submitted. It has the VOD. It has ways to support me. It has the soundtrack that's playing right now in the background. It links you to where this is from. And it has other ways to support my channel with all of my other social medias down below. In the comments below, please leave me your best Portal joke. It can be about this game or even themed from the game Portal because, I mean, oops, excuse me, oops. Because reasons, right? So give me your best Portal jokes down in the comments. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed all these previews. Warlock is now done. Last but not least is the Demon Hunter, which took your metamorphosis, I know. But I will now see you all. Thank you all so much again in the next, my brain right now, in the next Legion testing video.